I'm the founder of MK Talent Advisory. I've been in talent acquisition for about 13 years. I've worked across a number of sectors where I've executed a number of high volume and scaling recruitment projects. So starting out in travel at TUI Group, I led several teams there with high volume campaigns across Europe. I built and scaled a recruitment function for a luxury hospitality business in London. And then I spent the last 6.5 years at PwC as a senior talent acquisition leader, where I led a team of 20 people. We hired around 1,400 people every year. And then I spent 2 years working in consulting at PwC as well. So I was advising and executing large-scale recruitment strategies for FTSE 100 businesses that were undergoing mergers and acquisitions. And so everything that I'm going to go through with you today around scaling recruitment is very much from lived experiences. It's things I've tried and tested and failed here and there. And these are the kind of critical things that I think are really important and have proven to be important when you're scaling a business. So there's a number of scenarios where you might be looking to scale. So this could be due to business growth, you might be entering into new markets, new locations. You might have gone through a round of funding, so you've got new investment and you now need to scale your operations. It might be cyclical activities where you have seasonal campaigns, did a lot of that in hospitality and travel, or as I mentioned before, you're going through a merger and acquisition. And so regardless of the scenario that you find yourself within, the size of your business or the complexity of that scale, the preparation side is really critical. So what I've got here is just failure to prepare, preparing to fail is incredibly relevant in these scenarios. So what you'll usually find with some common pitfalls is people kind of wanting to rush into getting straight into recruitment, posting jobs, getting bums on seats. But what you'll find in that situation when you kind of go a bit too fast is that you're going to miss out on all the preparation that's needed. So if you've got immature processes, so if you're a smaller business and you haven't kind of dealt with volume before, then you might have immature processes. So what you'll find is as you start to gather momentum, you'll find you'll get delays in your process, you'll lose candidates to competitors, underestimating resource requirements. So if you're scaling, there's a lot of requirements on hiring managers and recruiting teams and that's involved really. And I think we end up overloading those teams and putting a lot of pressure on them to deliver within the timeframes that we want them to. And then from that, what we do is just kind of end up with bad hires, bad experiences, and a really stressed out team, especially when hiring teams are still trying to do their BAU, as they're going through this period of growth as well. Unclear expectations of hiring teams. So, if you are part of the hiring team, there's, an expectation that you'll be available for your interviews, and again, not kind of managing those expectations up front can cause delays down the line. Assessment processes, are they right for what you're now needing? So if you're creating new roles, new departments, you might not have assessment criteria and tools that are now relevant for those jobs. And again, if you're not assessing for the right skills and competencies, then you'll end up with bad hires in the long term. And then lack of sourcing strategy. So I think this is where you have a massive impact on cost because you end up, maybe throwing everything out to agencies. So then you've got a huge impact on your costs there. Time to hire might be really, really slow because of inaccurate processes. So again, time versus resource and what have you. And also there'll be a lot of roles that you can probably source yourselves, but you maybe kind of not taking the time to go through that. And so those are kind of some of the pitfalls that we can find ourselves in. And then these are the steps or the framework that I would recommend people working towards. So this is all about recruitment readiness. This is a term that I've used in all the projects that I've scaled, and it really is the key to successful execution. So it's easy to want to get the wheels in motion and hit the market, but taking the time to go through these steps and prepare will kind of set you up for success in the long run. So it's really important that you understand where you are now and where you want to be. So what I mean by that is what roles do you need to hire? How efficient are your processes? What new things do you need to implement in order to scale? So just doing like an as-is assessment on your recruitment function is really important to do, where you want to get to, and then, kind of work backwards from that. Market insights, so doing your external analysis, cost analysis, routes to market. So really understanding where you're going to find these people, what the salaries are, etc. Critical roles, I've got a whole section on critical roles, but these are roles that are critical to operations and revenue generation. Having hiring principles, so defining your end-to-end processes and implementing governance, and that goes back to my point before on confusion and people not really knowing what they're doing, inconsistencies, and then tracking, reporting, metrics, costs. So these are all the things that's going to make you, keep you in check, make sure you're on track. Make sure that, if you're putting money behind something around advertising, that you're getting the return. If you're not, you want to start switching that up during that phase. So those are like the 6 critical steps in preparing for your scale. And so your internal analysis, it's made up of all of these things here. So identifying your target headcount. So how many hires do you need to achieve? What are the roles that you're looking to hire, whether they're new or they're existing? So if they're existing roles, you've probably got job descriptions, assessment criteria, benchmark the roles, you know what the salaries are. If it's new roles, then you might need to be looking at how that impacts your organizational design. Do you need to now do role evaluations with HR and benchmark them? And then you probably need to write all your job descriptions and all that stuff as well. Your time goals. So when do you want to hire by is a good place to start. So when do you need roles in place? That's going to help you with your planning and your planning your hiring plan. So what are you putting out first? What are you going to go tackle first? What technology are you using as well is really important, because if you're a smaller business and you're working off a basic ATS system, God forbid you're still working on spreadsheets, but I know businesses do. If you're going to start scaling, then you probably need to have a look at your tech stack and see whether or not you think that that's going to be able to handle the volume. If it isn't around your tech, and that's fine, but it's a resource issue, then you might be thinking about, okay, well, is our delivery model right? Are we delivering this via an internal team, or do we need to get external help? So do you need an RPO? Do you need a temporary embedded talent team to come in? What agencies might you want to use to kind of help support the actual recruitment? And then one of the biggest and most basic, it seems really basic, is who's going to do the hiring. I've seen this so many times. People don't really think through the time commitment that it's going to need for hiring managers to deliver like recruitment at scale. And so that goes back to the point on managing expectations, the hiring managers having time set aside so that you're not just chasing them for interview time, feedback, CV reviews, all of that stuff. And the other thing is, if you don't have a department yet and you don't have head of department, then who's going to do the hiring for that team? So looking at allocating different resources. And then gathering and collating collateral. So as I mentioned before, the job descriptions and all of that stuff. So this internal analysis is really just looking at your as is. Your internal analysis is just really important. That's kind of giving you where are you right now? Where do you want to get to? And what is it going to take to get you there? Taking the time to really understand and map out what resources you're going to need, what collateral you've got, what you need to create, is really going to help you go live and help you achieve your own time goal, because you've kind of done the preparation. So when you press go live and you hit everything out on advertising, you're good to go. You've got all of these things in place. And then you want to look at your external analysis as well. So benchmarking salaries. So this is all down to budget. Do you know what the benchmark salaries are for the new roles that you're going to bring in? Do you know how much it's going to cost you to hire these people and put them on the payroll for long term? And that links into your role evaluation with HR. If you have HR, if not, someone in recruitment can help with that stuff. So benchmarking your salaries is an important thing to do. Then looking at, are you competitive in the market? What are your competitors doing? That kind of stuff is really important as well, so that you can hit the market with a compelling offer as well. Where you can find the talent, so doing talent mapping and skills availability is really important. So it's all very well saying you're going to set up a new tech team, but in, I don't know, Aberdeen, where Tom is, but if you don't have loads of developers and the skill sets there, then you're not going to hire that many people there. So it helps with your talent mapping and your sourcing strategy to really understand where people are really. There's loads of tech out there, which I won't name drop now, but I've got plenty of relationships with tech providers, which are really, really helpful and just kind of gives you a really clear plan of where you're going to hit and where you're not. And then also what that does is say, well, actually, we know that these roles we can probably hire ourselves, and these roles are going to be the hard to fill ones because we see that there's a skills gap in the market, and so they're going to be harder to fill. So it helps you kind of segment some of your roles into direct and external. Yeah, advertising platforms as well. So if you've got that information already, that's it's good to know where you get your best return on investment. But again, looking at programmatic advertising, where you can kind of put your money behind a number of sources and it kind of moves your money around as to where you're getting the best return. If you've got embedded talent teams, that they can help you to kind of direct your spend in the right places. That just determines all of your sourcing strategy, basically. So combining your internal analysis with your external analysis, this gives you a really good base to determine your sourcing and attraction strategy, help inform your budget and the resources that you need. It can give you a good indication as to the time it's going to take you to actually hire. And then from that, you can just create a really detailed action plan. And wave planning can also be a really useful tool. So if you've got a bunch of critical roles or priority roles, put them in wave one, get those out the door first, especially if you've got a high volume. So moving into critical roles then. So critical roles are really, really important to identify. So on here I said it's essential to business operations, performance, revenue generation, and in some cases a legal requirement. So examples of critical roles might be your chief operating officer or a VP of sales, market growth lead, finance lead, and then legal required roles depending on the size of your business and what you do. Health and safety, data protection, anti-money laundering, compliance, legal, finance, you get the idea. So it's really important for you to kind of identify what those critical roles are. And as I say, you stick those guys in wave one and you create a prioritized hiring plan for those people. And generally, because they're more senior roles or so important to operations and revenue generation, those are the ones that you might want to have suppliers supporting you and third parties that have got a really good network of candidates. You might want to put more money behind those roles. It just kind of helps you, kind of get those out. And so hiring principles then. So this is basically everything that you need to physically recruit people with consistency, cohesion, and clarity. So creating a recruitment governance framework, I would say, is just an absolute necessity. What you get here is just everyone knowing what is expected of them from the get-go. So roles and responsibilities, mapping that out, what does a hiring manager need to be doing? What are they committing to? Where do they have accountability? Where do they need to take an action? When does it go to recruitment or HR for sign off or whatever it is? Just being super, super clear, because that just keeps the wheels in motion in a well-oiled machine. Developing hiring team training. So what is the interview process? Where, do you have competency interviews? Do you have assessments in place? Do they know how to use them? Do they know how to interview objectively, and are they aware of their biases? And all of that stuff is really important, that you're hiring quality and that you are testing for the right things, basically. The mapping out your end-to-end strategy. So again, knowing what you need to, what happens from end to end is really, really important. So right from where you advertise, how they come into your ATS system, how you then process them through, going back to your roles and responsibilities, who's picking those things up. And the other thing I'd say is an approval process, because when you're hiring at scale and you've got lots of interviews going on, going back to your budget, if everyone's just offering everybody everything, it can sometimes be hard to track that. So having an offer approvals process where you're tracking what's coming in, again, is really, really useful, just to make sure that you're in budget and that you're in the benchmark and that someone's got a record of all of these hires and who said, yeah, we're happy to hire them. So mapping out, again, all your hiring principles and understanding what your performance metrics are, what is good, what are you expecting your recruiters to do in what time frame. So how quick should we sift in CVs, get them over to hiring managers, etc. So again, that just with their SLAs, it just helps to be quite clear on those. Next up is tracking and reporting. My approach to all of this is always track, review, report, adjust. So just keep tracking. When you've done your internal and external analysis, I would recommend creating a project milestone plan. This would be something like job evaluation. The step will be write job descriptions, and that would be the ownership of X. What the date is that you need that delivered by, and kind of work through those, but working backwards from your go live date. This just helps you kind of keep actions super clear. It's great to tick them off as you go, and then if there's any delays, you're able to see, okay, well, who does that impact and who's dependent on that task happening for them to be able to do their own. So it's just project management basically. Role trackers, so list of open roles, where they're at. You can kind of set the days to see how long people have been in process for. You might want to review your own recruitment dashboards. It depends on the tech that you've got really. But understanding what you're tracking, what good looks like, where things are slowing down, where you might have a risk, and then you can implement mitigations for that as well. Meeting cadence, getting everyone on a call, getting updates. As I say, it's much easier to identify issues and look for a new go-to-market strategy for a role, get some more money behind it if you're having regular meetings, and then identifying your key performance indicators, what's showing that you're on track and where is it highlighting problems. And then again, if you're seeing delays in recruiters getting CVs through to hiring managers, etc., then you can kind of pull them up and say what's happening here, and again just kind of intercept and resolve the issue basically. And then lastly on here, it's the costs and other metrics, monitoring your ROI. So some costs are really obvious and some are less so. But you do need to make sure you're mapping these costs out and tracking on a regular basis. So I've seen businesses completely below their budgets due to a lack of tracking, not doing the due diligence in the external and internal analysis stages, underestimating how much it's going to cost to actually recruit people. And that could be the cost of, we need to update the careers website. Well, who does that? Is there someone you pay for that? We actually need to put a little bit more money behind this role. Okay, how is that impacting our bottom line? And so making sure that you're monitoring your conversions through advertising platforms, adjusting your approach if you're not getting the return on that, looking at what roles you've got out with agencies, what are most likely to land with agencies, so what are the projected hires versus direct and indirect. You might set up an employee referral program. So if Danny decides to refer 5 people into the business and you've got to pay a couple of grand each, just making sure that you're keeping track on that. Any training and onboarding costs, employer branding, as I said, like the careers website, and then looking at your long-term value. So this will be quality of hires, retention rates, everything else that is completely gone out of my mind right now, but there'll be other ways that you can track the quality of those hires in the longer term as well. Yeah, so that's all of the 6 stages basically of how to kind of work within a framework and get yourself prepared. What you'll end up having is kind of bringing it all together really. So you've got like an action plan. So the planning could be, deep diving and identify your critical roles. What's your wave planning and execution, hiring, reporting, process and tools, and so on and so forth. And basically what you've got there is what your planning is, what your actions are to deliver it, and then what are the key outputs. So what are your deliverables there? An example tracker. So this is quite complex, not saying everything would need to be this complex in all scenarios, but it just means that what you're looking at here is roles that you've got, where they are in their process, and then like how likely they are to land basically, and you can color code it so that it will go red or amber when you know that you're going to be hitting, and maybe this isn't going to land in time. And then the milestone planner is what I mentioned before, so like basic project management. So so you got like your attraction, job requisitions, write job descriptions. Do that by the 30th because actually we might go live on the 5th, and so we need everything in on that date so that we can kind of get things moving. And so you'll have a number of documents like that, but it just means that everyone's got something to look back on. You can track your progress, you know where your risks are early so that you can mitigate those risks, and ultimately deliver and execute the recruitment that you need. And this is exactly the type of thing that I did with the businesses that I've helped to scale in the past. Both businesses were to recruit 1,000 people in 6 months with quite large recruitment teams and globally, so across 30 to 40 territories globally. By doing all of this work in the first instance, really helped to, well, it didn't really help. It was, critical in the execution of that project, and those businesses being ready in this scenario to sell, be acquired by another business. So I would highly recommend, if it isn't all these steps, that you're taking bits from each of them to help you scale properly, and yeah, hopefully you'll have a successful project. There's a lot of information here, and it's hard to really put it out on a presentation and break it down. It kind of looks more than it is. If you've got that all nice on a project plan and you've done all the internal external analysis, your way forward is actually a lot clearer than maybe as it comes across here. And also I've got a 4-week program that I've just launched as well, which is designed to kind of review and diagnose what your recruitment issues are, and then give you a roadmap to success moving forwards. And so please let me know if anyone else wants to have a call with me. Other than that, that is it.